Chapter 1: Genesis. Humanity and technology grew for thousands of years, expanding into entirely new fields of possibility and potential. Humans upgraded themselves, merging with machines and possessing powers that we today would consider godly. Over eons of evolution, they eventually reached the end of their evolutionary cycle, able to harness and control energy and matter at will, achieving great harmony with the universe. They traveled and observed civilizations on distant planets as they grew in their own ways, watching as the cycles of life shifted and adapted, always distant observers from afar. But there was one among them with ambitious and visionary intent. He loved to shapeshift and mingle with life forms, blending into their worlds and living amongst them. He became a historical figure in many of the planet's timelines, offering knowledge and technology that accelerated their evolutions. Yet, he yearned for more. He wanted to start from scratch, to build his own species and guide them from the very start. In all his time living among countless species, there was one creature that he came to love the most: the bull. The bulls were proud and strong creatures. They had large hearts with a natural affinity to protect their kin. He fell in love with their shape, with the strength of their horns, and the dual nature of their soft grazing that could shift in a single moment to great and awesome power. They were perfect to start this new world. On a new planet, he channeled all his energy into an explosion of creation that instantly formed an impenetrable mountain that reached beyond the clouds, with 9,999 unique bulls at its base who would form his ideal society. He let his creativity pour out, and his will began to splice and merge with the bulls' genetics, altering them and making them grow into bipedal walkers, changing the hue of their furs into bright and beautifully flamboyant shades. He crystallized their horns, made some solid gold and others rough like the rock of magma. He made some unbreakable glass that, when reflected in the light of day, contained thousands of refracting rainbows. There were combinations and genetic splices of textures, materials, and colors that never would have existed in natural evolution. While they were each a deep part of him, down to their very DNA, they were all free to develop into their true selves and live freely. He used the last remnants of his power to shapeshift from being the creator to becoming one of them, so that he could live anonymously amongst them and watch his children as they evolved into his ultimate vision. Chapter 2: Guilds and Teens. As the thick mist and electrical charges from the creator's blast subsided, a giant mountain began to reveal itself, towering above the bulls and passing through the clouds. Each bull was born with one of 4 birthmarks on the bottom of their feet, and whilst they all acted and looked the same, there was a slight deviation within the string of their genetics. Of the nearly 10,000 bulls that had been born, they instinctively separated into 4 equal-numbered guilds based on the marks they found beneath their feet. It was all part of the grand plan the Creator had for their civilization. The 4 guilds exited the base of the mountain at different entrances, each marking the cardinal directions of north, south, east, and west, and over time each guild grew bright and blossoming cities. These cities were magnificent works of art. Giant buildings rose high into the sky in bright colors of oranges, greens, gold, and blues. The bulls took on expressive and unique personalities, free to do as they pleased, each bull ingrained with the impulse to follow their passions. It was common to see groups of musicians performing on street corners, singing and playing their hearts out. There were sports arenas integrated openly into the city. Every bull was allowed to do as they pleased, and a thriving and booming economy grew out of it. With no restraints on their free will, the bulls were able to thrive in a way that humanity never was. They didn't have to work behind a desk doing mindless jobs. The world was the bulls to play with, however they felt called. Over time, as scientists and philosophers grew amongst them, they yearned to know the answer to how they could reproduce. The leading minds of the 4 cities came together, and they soon discovered a beautiful secret hidden in their genes. They discovered within their DNA a method of genetically engineering a new bull. By merging the DNA of two bulls from the same guild within a highly advanced incubator, they were able to do the impossible. As the incubated bull burst to life, it took on a completely unexpected form. An entirely new species of bull was born. They were taller, more energetic, and unpredictable to say the least. The incubator had accelerated their growth. They were teens. As more and more teen bulls were born, it became obvious that they were the hallmark for change and evolution within their world. And it was these teen bulls that wanted to expand their cities and come together. They offered new, drastic ideas and sought to grow to new heights. And it was among one of them, a fearless and adventurous teen, who uncovered a secret atop the mountain of creation. Chapter 3. Gods are Born. One of the teen bulls, known as Red, was bound for adventure and summited the great mountain of creation for the first time in bull history. Beyond the clouds, Red located a hidden entrance where he found a large, flat, glowing stone at its center, inscribed with mysterious runes. The teen worked tirelessly to decode it, and eventually the secrets inscribed there became clear to him. The runes depicted the next stage of their evolution, an evolution towards the very powers of the Creator himself. But in order for this evolution to take place, a great sacrifice had to be made. The teen bull had to willingly give up his physical form with the promise of eternal life and the key to the next stage in their evolution. Red was brave and proud and sacrificed his physical form with no hesitation. A bright beacon shot into the sky as soon as it was done, and it could be seen from each of the 4 cities. The teen bulls from each guild were the first to respond to the call, as if a tribal drumbeat in the very fabric of their bones. They rushed to the top of the mountain via a stairway that had not previously existed, to find a floating orb hovering above the runestone. The energy orb was the ethereal remains of Red, who had given up his physical form, and he transmitted the knowledge to the rest of the teens. They knew what to do now. A teen bull from each of the 4 guilds gathered and simultaneously placed their hands upon the merger orb. In an instant, they were twisted into a vortex of swirling energy that created a burst of dazzling light. Their forms merged, and when at last the light dimmed, a godly presence stood before the rest of the bulls at the top of the mountain peak. The first of the god bulls was born, alive and glowing with elemental energy. They possessed a power greater than any of the bulls had ever seen. The god bull could harness the element it was born into, and as more gods were born, they took on different powers, based on the cosmic balance they were born to uphold. Chapter 4. Order and Chaos. With the birth of the god bull, a primal surge sparked a new wave of celebration and unity for most within the 4 guild cities. Subject 1, now known by everybody simply as S1, and the first teen to ever be born, felt this primal energy in a different way. Something unknown called out to him to explore beyond the boundaries of the city. He had this new and obsessive craving to uncover more about his origin. This unknown calling gnawed at him until he eventually disobeyed the laws of the bulls and left his guild and brothers behind to search the vastly unexplored land that surrounded the mountain of creation. He couldn't explain why he needed so badly to leave, but it excited him to traverse new and entirely unexplored terrain. At first, it was easy, but the further he got away from the 4 cities, the harsher the terrain got. It was after weeks of travel and ascending a range of sharp, snowy mountain peaks that he found himself spotting a shimmer amidst the snow. His eyes widened as he beheld an alien vessel half buried in the snow. As he stepped towards it, the vessel seemed to respond to his presence, and from the seamless wall, a door materialized, revealing the inside of a spacecraft. S1 knew that this is what had been calling him all along. He stepped inside to see a metallic orb miraculously suspended mid-air with glowing symbols etched into it, resembling gild marking all bulls had on their feet. This had to be the creator's craft. S1 reached out and touched the orb, causing it to spin quickly and erupt with a burst of holographic displays. Before him, on multiple screens, images started playing. Images of beings he had never seen before. They were wearing all sorts of strange garments, unique to everyone. S1 sat down and watched the history of humanity unfold before his very eyes. Weeks went by as he learned as much as he could at a pace beyond belief. For reasons unknown, he could absorb and retain information from all holograms at once. The technology was mind-boggling. He watched until suddenly the video changed, and he was staring at a familiar face of a godly-looking being that he had never seen before, and yet couldn't shake the feeling that he knew who it was. And as the footage unraveled, his eyes widened as he watched the creator spark the life of everything he now knew. Mystified and in awe, S1 collected the hologram device, which he dubbed the Genesis Sphere, and took the long journey back to the Four Cities. S1 brought the Genesis Sphere to a high-tech arena and displayed it for all to witness. The arena became a museum, displaying the history of humanity and the origin of their creation. Having been mixed with their creator's DNA, the bulls had a genetic affinity to all that they saw within the old footage. The bulls quickly took to making the clothes, outfits, and uniforms to match what they saw in the videos. They fell in love with the beauty and diversity of the 20th and 21st centuries of humanity. The styles mesmerized them, and most quickly fashioned outfits without any real knowledge as to their primary function. Suddenly, there were bulls wearing pirate outfits, drinking coffee, or lounging with others dressed in police uniforms, chef hats, superhero costumes, and even kingly robes. Bulls wore football gear, headpiece and all, while having breakfast with samurai. Their creativity and love for fashion boomed, and soon all four guilds had over half of their population in clothing from various time periods in human history, and it became a show of pride to the point of near religion for a bull to wear new outfits daily, regardless of what they were doing. They let their creativity unfold and mismatched various attires, some sporting bathrobes while also wearing sailors' hats and gold chains. Others carried surfboards while wearing cosplay headgear and creative t-shirts. Not all bulls, however, took to this new craze, and roughly half the population chose to remain closer to their roots, keeping themselves free of clothing. The creator, who walked amongst them, observed them with an odd fascination. Even as there was a split in opinions on clothing, the creator noticed that, unlike humanity, no conflict arose out of it. He had watched many a human fight over lesser matters, but the bulls seemed content with whatever their brothers chose. While the new spark initiated a change in their fashion, that was only a surface-level alteration. The bulls had grown content, and the strive for further progress seemed to vanish. The creator teleported to a lab deep within Creation Mountain and watched as his creations, driven by their programmed DNA, slowly began to fall into a state of fulfillment with no strong drive to advance their civilization. The creator saw an error in his dream. In his striving for a perfect civilization, he had tipped the scales of balance too far into serenity. The truth of the universe was that it needed both chaos and order to survive. One could not exist without the other. The creator realized the error in his ways. Deep change was needed. The emotions the bulls rarely displayed, like anger and rage, were catalysts that evoked transformation. Civilization needed conflict to grow. As he was analyzing the strands of DNA within the bulls, he found that they did have the possibility for conflict, but only when called to protect themselves or those a bull cared about. Therein lied the secret. The bulls were happy with themselves. They were loyal to a fault and had no deep conflicts with their kin. They needed conflict and rivalry. The creator knew what he had to do.